How's it going, everybody? Good evening from the land of Carpo. Josh, if you will. If you prefer Joshua, you know. It's irrelevant, I guess. I go by Carpo because it's my nickname from when I was younger, but I never really used it with my friends as much. A few of my friends call me Carpo, actually. Actually, about half my friends call me Carpo, I guess, but anyway. I thought this will be my 3,000 subscribers video. I guess. Somebody pointed that out the other day, and I thought, you know, it's kind of interesting. It's weird. I remember when I had like 100 subscribers, when I cracked 100, and I was like, wow, I can't believe there's 100 people that are actually watching my channel, talking about random nonsense. And it's morphed into just a few thousand. Not that there's only, you know, maybe 100 people that actually watch the videos, if that. Which I'm just shocked that there's that many people. It's like I have that many people that are interested in what I have to say. I find that almost, it's humbling, it's inspiring, and it's a bit, you know, I have to take it with a grain of salt. The whole time I've been doing this YouTube channel, I've realized that each person who's subscribed to my channel does it for their own reason. If I had videos that were always about, you know, Eastern philosophy or Eastern mysticism, then those type of people would, you know, subscribe to my channel. If I always talked about New World Order and conspiracies, then those types of people who are interested in that would subscribe to my channel. If I always talked about just weed, then only weed people would subscribe to my channel, which is why I made a separate channel just for cannabis, actually, and plants, because I enjoy the subject so much. But I've kept this channel open to so many different philosophies and ideas, you know. It's like somebody said a while ago, they said, I miss your old videos, and I asked them, what do you mean? But I was serious, like, I don't know which videos you meant. You know, there was a time when all I talked about was prepping. You know, like, you gotta get prepared for an apocalypse, a disaster, something's gonna happen. And then, you know, a few months later, I'm into, you know, Kundalini yoga. I mean, I've gone through so many different phases in life, so many different states of mind. And it's funny, I picked up my phone before I came out here. The Purple Skull. And I looked down at the screen and it had a picture of my cannabis garden I have on there. And for some reason, this whole idea popped through my head, and I thought, I'm going to try to convey that idea, but it's not going to be easy. It's like, there's us, and then there's our stuff, and then there's our processes of what we do with our stuff. I thought about looking at that picture of all those buds and thinking, 20 years ago, that would have been just the most amazing thing to me. Like, wow, like I can't believe it. I'd be thinking about it all the time. And nowadays I've grown immune to it. I've grown accustomed to having certain things in life, you know. I've grown accustomed to a certain lifestyle, if you will. It's just like when you get your first raise at a job and you're making $1 more, it makes a big difference to get another $40 per paycheck. And as you get older, $40 just starts to mean very little. Then you get broke again, and $40 is all of a sudden a lot of money. I walk that line between things being, you know, $20 being a lot and meaning nothing. But we're realizing along the whole way that we have our stuff, and we have ourselves, and we have our behaviors or paths of what we do with stuff. In other words, I would say that it's easy to want to separate ourselves from stuff because we're moving around within it. But of course we know we are part of this stuff. But what separates us is our consciousness. And our consciousness is that catalyst. Our consciousness is that it's what causes us to change stuff, to do things with stuff. In natural world, there are processes, chemical processes, okay, that go on, and you've got various conversions of molecules. You say you separate, you know, water, you boil it off, and you've got hydrogen and oxygen, okay? You can do what they call electrolysis, right? Isn't that where you isolate the hydrogen and then you can burn it off? And that chemical action, just boiling water, separating it off into steam, into gases, and then recondensing as water. It's caused by heat. So think of the things that we do in our lives, the things that we affect, is caused by our own heat, if you will. Heat is nothing more than light, right? I mean, heat is energy. Heat is, infrared light will cause heat. Heat is the excitement of atoms, right? So, without getting too bullshit scientific nonsense in here, we are acting upon our environment similar to the way that energy or light or heat affects and vibrates molecules. The molecules being just being a metaphor for the macro micro. That we are everything's constantly in motion and we're playing with it. It's like molecules get excited and they go around and the atoms bump off each other and cause an atomic reaction. The same thing is happening. They're giving off electrons. So one person can walk around through society and be the same way. They could be almost like, in a very symbolic way, of course. Since no energy is ever created or destroyed, even an atomic explosion pulls energy from somewhere. Okay, so it's just difficult to explain. We are our stuff. So check this out. I made this pipe out of a cannabis pot stem from my outdoor garden this year, and I left all the roots on it. I just saw it sitting up there and I thought it'd be a perfect example of how human consciousness shapes nature. I'm growing a plant the way I want it to grow, and then when it's done I can cut it down into pieces, but it doesn't make me any different than a beaver who chews it up for his log home. The difference is that I'm not doing it for survival, I'm doing it for posterity, enjoyment. And that's really what makes us unique, is that we do things for fun, okay? And we affect our environment in such intense ways while we're having fun. It's unfortunate that there's us, our stuff, and then there's what we do with our stuff. This also extends to us. And when I say stuff, I mean the earth. I mean earth. Even if you're talking about a plastic toy, that's stuff that came from the earth, that was manufactured. And I think we really have to start to listen to our hearts and use our minds too. So we're not just looking into the back of so we're not just turning a blind eye when we go out and buy something that may be a small item, let's say, but has a huge impact by the way it was manufactured, the way it was transported. Maybe the, supplies were mined in America, then sent over to China, and then they made the parts, sent them back to America to be put together, and then trucked them out to the stores, and all these different processes. And we have to go through all this shit in our minds and figure it out each day. Like, what are we doing? Is it affecting the environment negatively? Yada, yada, yada. We're playing a crazy game of chess, and I know people like to look to humans and think that we're this scourge, that we're this cancer, that we're damaging to our environment, that we're just out for greed, that we're just selfish. And I used to see us that way, but I don't any longer. I see us as children growing up. Spoiled children, okay? Spoiled children that were given too many toys too quickly. And this is what the Industrial Revolution brought us. Too many toys too quickly. And we hadn't even learned how to harness the power of the atom before we created a frickin' nuclear weapon with it. I mean, and then we used it. Oh, did we use it? Sometimes I get into my positive thinking schemes and I say I can think of a positive in any situation. And one guy posed, what about dropping the bomb on Hiroshima? And I said, absolutely, I can see the positive in that, because back then we were the only one that had the bomb. If we would have waited another 30 years, people would have started getting, a little impatient to see how these things really work on a city. And now we can look back and see the destruction and hopefully not make that mistake again. But that's a good example of what I mean when I say there's us and our environment and then what we do with it. We condense these elements down into their purest forms to where they're so dangerous to us that they might kill us. Plutonium, cesium, whatever else these various, productions are. I was into nuclear power a while back, and I read a lot about it. When I was in jail for a little while, I had a book about nuclear energy, and it really turned my mind around on how opposed I had been to nuclear power. And ironically enough, I made a video the other day, actually, and it was about a year ago, but I had a comment on the video the other day, and it was about could nuclear power be safe? And the guy was all angry and telling me I'm an idiot because, this much plutonium can kill this many people. And I say, this is not the point. The point is, can it be made clean? Can it be utilized better? And these new reactors that I was talking about are the ones that they can take the old spent fuel rods that we previously have stored and not known what to do with, and use the rest of those up. Use it all up. They're like closed loop systems that can't overheat. They can't melt down. They're pretty amazing. But anyway, like 4th generation or something. But the point being that we have to consider the options of what we're doing to our planet. We have to consider the options of what we're doing to each other and see, is this the path that we want to take to our future? And people say that all the time, look around at what's happening. But that's not going to do any good. Waking up doesn't mean anything if people don't know what they're waking up to. In other words, people are just going to go back to sleep if they wake up and look around and see that other people who are awake are just ranting and raving and screaming about how things should be, could be, would be, should have been, could have been, would have been. We're all walking together. And every one of the people, every one of you who's watching this video right now, I'm going to assume that all of you are somewhere between 16 and 76. Let's say, I don't know, maybe older, maybe younger, I don't know. But average, person being in their 40s, let's say, and 30s to 40s. And all of us have grown up together in the same generation that went through this transition from analog to digital, and we look back on it now and say, oh, the good old days when we had tapes, just like the good old days with records, with 8 tracks, wax records, all the way back to the good old days when we created the first machines before we had electricity. There's people alive today who, were alive when electricity was still a big novelty, and it's kind of amazing if you really think about it. Electricity's only been around for about 100 years. 100 years. So while we think that we should be so evolved and moving beyond all these things in our ignorance, the reality is that we really don't know any better. We haven't learned how to harness our own power yet. But we're doing the best we can. I think that most of us are. There are still plenty of people taking advantage and abusing power, but, I try not to see that anymore, because if that's all I focus on, then I'm losing faith in humanity. I see it as a defeatist approach, a way to say, oh, well, these guys are ruining the planet, so there's nothing I can do about it. Because there is something we can do about it. Teach our kids not to be like the assholes. Teach our kids how important the planet is. Read them books like The Lorax by Dr. Seuss, Dr. Seuss. like the movies. It's a phenomenal example of what happens when the movie is pretty funny. The recent Lorax, the new one, they're selling bottled air, and all the metaphors are there. They always have been, but they're stronger today. And you can see through people and the way that we talk that we care a lot more. That we care about our environment, that we care about each other. That we understand that we all have to live here together, and this world gets smaller and smaller every day. And that you and I may have our disagreements. You and I may have different opinions, but that's never going to change just because we want people to think like us. If we want people to change and think like us, we have to not only convince them of why they should think like us, but more importantly, and I can't stress this enough, is to convince ourselves of why people should think like us. Because often people are so convinced that others should think like them, they don't even question why they think that way. For example, Christians who are pushy on non-Christians, and the person's like, well, why do you believe this? They say, well, because I always have. I have faith. I just have faith, and I know it's true. I just know it's true. And then one day they go, wait a minute, maybe it's not. And then they feel dumb for pressuring other people, but they didn't know any better. And this beyond religion, this goes through politics, I know people who are raised in Republican households who, have Republican values. Or, conservative values. I know people who are raised in left households that have left values. And of course, conservatives from liberal households and vice versa. But that's not the point. The point is that we are products of our environment, to an extent. And to the rest of it, it's all decision. So we can only say our parents affected us this way so long. We can only say that and blame other people or society for so much. If you've got 2 feet and you've got a brain and you have the attention span to sit and listen to me sit here and talk for 17 minutes, then you have the capacity to change the world because you're a focused human. You have the capacity to think. That's really all you need. You don't even need 2 feet, you don't need 2 hands. You don't need anything except for that thinking power, which is the one thing that should never, that we should be more afraid to lose than anything. People aren't afraid of death, people are afraid of losing their mind. And sometimes when I look around, to bring this full circle, when I look around at myself and the stuff and my interaction between stuff in this world, it makes me a little bit crazy inside. And for a while that kind of scared me. And then I realized that that's just a process. That's the insanity that one goes through while they're healing from the wounds that have been pressed upon them by society. And meanwhile, while I go along my little path and learn my route, there are going to be little stops along the way. There are going to be pitfalls. I'm going to have great elated days, and I'm going to have bummed out days. But I'm also going to have a lot of people resisting and pushing against me. People telling me that I should be a certain way. Society telling me I should be a certain way. People seeing that I'm content and telling me that I'm unhappy because of it, out of pure jealousy or discontent. And, I don't like to say that because it sounds egotistical, but it's true. It's happened so many times that other people have spent their time criticizing, things about what I should be changing, when they don't even know me, or, when it's something that maybe they should be changing about themselves. And I've given up on caring about that. It's become a non-issue. If somebody brings up something about my life, I don't care anymore. And I don't want that to turn into a disassociation or becoming unattached to emotion and to people, because I have lost a lot of emotional, my father died in front of me basically when I was 15. I mean, he had lost his mind basically at the end there, and he, that kind of stuff, I didn't even realize how much it affected me till later in life. But now that I admit it, move through it, I'm stronger for it. But, I'm not going to sit and let it plague me. I'm not going to I guess what I'm saying is that it affected my emotional state, and I think that it takes a lot more for me to be upset or cry now because of things like that. I'm very numb. If you want to put it that way, I'm numb. to a lot of things. And I don't get high to numb my feelings or numb my pain. Although, to a degree, I guess we all kind of do. I don't get super wasted. I never get to the point where I actually forget about my problems. So I guess when I'm smoking pot, it actually makes my problems worse sometimes, just because I'm thinking more about them, because it gets my brain flowing. And I have a relationship with my plants, you know. Like one of my subs, William, said the other day, you know, he talked about pot, asked me about if I saw pot as being kind of a, you know, what do I get from it? What kind of, you know, feelings do I have about the plant? She's a very special girl, you know. She gets me thinking. People talk about pot as being, you know, something that makes you sit and think. Well, yeah, it does. That's why all those people that call, you know, pot smokers stupid stoners, I just blow them off. They're usually some of the weakest, least intelligent people I've ever met. It's usually a full-blown alcoholic pointing the finger at somebody else. But it doesn't matter to me. And that's what I'm getting at. None of that matters to me anymore. I'm standing strong for what I believe in. Yet I'm not stubborn or saying this is the way I'm always going to be. I'm saying this is the way I am now, take it or leave it. Because I don't have time to fret over other people's opinion of me. And that's why I've considered in the past, like, I enjoy speaking. I've thought about starting my own maybe channel, some kind of, like, you know, there's all these truther channels and people talking about this and that, spirituality, and I can't find a niche, you know, something to talk about. But just philosophy, you know, even that, this is enough for me. Because if I were to get into something bigger, like a radio show or something, then you've got not just subscribers, but paying subscribers that expect news. You've got companies funding you. You have to pay for stuff, so you've got to make sure that you've got the stories so you can pay for your, you know, I got nothing to pay for it. I'm using my cell phone and I'm posting videos about life. And that's the way I want to keep it, at least for now. And it allows me to open up. It's like my mom was over here today and we were talking, and I said, you know, with my videos, I said, you know, I get pretty personal in my videos. I do talk about a lot of personal stuff, but it's because I really don't feel like I have anything to hide. But I was saying that the truth is I only upload about half my videos, and the other half just get erased. I don't, you know, it's kind of like the metaphor of writing a letter to someone who pissed you off and then just burning the letter because, you know, and my mom understood. She said she'd written a lot of letters to people, you know, over the years, situations like that, and I've done the same thing. Angry letters that you never mail because you feel satisfied, and I get that same thing off of talking about life on YouTube. One thing I like about smoking keef hash is that it burns by itself forever. It's just pure trichomes packed in there. The aroma of terpenes. Today I opened up the container and it smelled like cat piss and menthol. Just like one of my strains. The other strain smells like ginger. It tastes like ginger. So I love identifying the different terpenes. I'll tell you, if all pot tasted the same, I might not be that interested in it. But with that, I bid you all adieu. So take yourself and your stuff and what you do with your stuff, and just think about it for a minute. Not just your stuff, all of our stuff, the world around us, you know, the environment we live in. It's a crazy world out there. It's a jungle out there. Peace.